Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and this is a breakdown of Agatha All Along episodes 8 and 9. Follow me, my friend, to glory at the end, and Maiden Mother Crone. Everything you might have missed in these two episodes. I want to thank you so much for your patience for these breakdowns. This series meant so much to us. We really wanted to do these right and not rush them for the sake of rushing them. And yeah, some of the impressions from this finale have been a bit divided. I just really felt that we needed to re-examine these final two episodes in the context of the full season, and taking that time allowed us to find some new details, a lot of new details, and make some pretty insane connections. So join us for one last trip down the Witch's Road. And a reminder that the best way to support New Rockstars is to grab some of our amazing Agatha-inspired designs from our merch store, nerdriot.shop. They make amazing holiday gifts, and you know, that season's coming up. So get something special for that nerd in your life. Let's start with episode 8, Follow Me, My Friend, to Glory at the End. These are the normal ending lyrics of the Ballad of the Witch's Road, the sacred version, not the new cover that we hear in episode 9, which ends with, wherever it may bend, I'll be there at the end. And that's because Follow Me, My Friend, to Glory at the End is a false promise made by Agatha to all the witches she used the song to lure into stealing their powers. She was not friends with any of them, and there wasn't glory at the end for any of them. The structure of these final two episodes is a similar misdirect. Agatha All Along provided no glorious ending with prizes, the way many Marvel Disney Plus series have aimed to do, sometimes unsuccessfully. No fireworks. Really, this series ends with two episodes. The first one ending with a bang, a pre-finale, followed by an actual finale that feels more like an epilogue. We open episode 8 back in Agatha's sleepover cabin from episode 5 as Alice Wu Gulliver lies on the floor after having her life force drained by Agatha, yet she's back appearing healthy, wearing her Hot Topic clothes. The camera glides over her body into this overhead angle as Rio's black-tipped fingers brush her cheek, and then the camera rolls into this upside down position so that it looks like Alice is upside down. And if you consider that Lilia was really falling up into the sword ceiling in episode 7, this would be the same pose she would have ended up in. This camera movement is especially creepy considering Death's fingers come in from below, yet when it rolls over Alice to show that angle of the room, there is no one standing there. Around Alice on the rug are torn pages from a book I couldn't identify, but the pages mention a Mr. Melou and a Sue and a Cram. Since the episode 5 trial was an 80s sleepover, I'm gonna assume this is from some teen paperback like Sweet Valley High or Babysitter's Club or Camp Sunnyside Friends. And speaking of 80s to 90s kid stories, listen to the music here as Rio presents herself. This is the same kind of instrumentation used in the Nickelodeon series Are You Afraid of the Dark's theme. So this is where Rio was in the final minutes of episode 5. It would be after this when Rio would then present herself to Lilia in her truer skeletal form in episode 7. It's an act of kindness here that Rio does not present her skull face to Alice, but rather a friendlier face to guide her to the end, as she respected a witch who went down fighting Agatha. Now, when Alice was on the floor at the beginning of the scene, it was just this version of her, but now when Rio points over, Alice sees her true drained corpse and the 80s clothes on the floor. It's similar to the shots for the 1990 film Ghost. When characters die, they don't initially realize they're dead and they rise to their feet and then turn back to see their corpse on the ground. Alice is in disbelief, saying this can't be the end, it has to be the beginning. Another parallel to Lilia, whose death was followed by a looping back to the beginning of her journey. A good ending should always feel like a new beginning. Alice follows Rio into a green mist out the cabin doors. Notice they don't go up out the exit stairs that Agatha and the others took, they go back through the doors from which they came in, the opposite direction on the road. The green mist is similar to the steam in the steam room in episode 3 and the smoke in Lorna Wu's dressing room from the fire. Now, to answer a question some are asking, the Ballad of the Witch's Road was a trick used by Agatha, but Lorna did not die by Agatha draining her. Lorna died from the generational curse demon in the fire, and Lorna had thought that going down the road could have saved her daughter Alice. Whereas most other episodes opened with the text of the episode title, this episode delays it so that it comes right after the Alice Rio prologue, as if to suggest it's Death's beckoning to Alice, like follow me, my friend, to glory at the end, reclaiming the phrase from Agatha's false promise to a genuine celebration of a witch who has died protecting another to follow a friend to eternal glory. Jen pounds on the doors of the Iron Maiden, screaming for Lilia, and remember, Iron Maidens are torture devices, and now Jen and Billy are kind of being tortured with survivor's guilt. Jen turns for a moment and... with just this earthy sound effect, the Iron Maiden doors have transformed off-screen into just tunnel dirt. Agatha finds Rio back in the road, and the dirt around Rio's feet swirls as she seems to be moving it telekinetically with her fingers. Rio is back to wearing her green crown. A crazy detail about this crown. We often saw Aubrey Plaza from these episode 8 scenes, these shots in the trailers, but in the trailers, they removed the crown from the shots. I don't know what about a green crown would have been a spoiler, but I guess they just didn't want to suggest that Rio had actually obviously a higher power status than the rest of them. Costumer Daniel Sellon, who just give him the Emmy at this point, went into detail on his design for Rio's costume, how it's meant to look like a fungal mycelium network merged with her body, and within the costume, it's meant to be a cycle of blossom and decay, and he added a little pet spider on her shoulder. In some of these shots, Agatha is framed with a tree with 3 branches behind her, once again recreating the 3 of Swords tarot card from Lilia's perspective in episode 7, and it's because she is always mourning her son Nicholas. Death realizes that Agatha all this time was distracting her from Billy, and indeed, we pointed out in our episode 4 breakdown, right before that hot mic moment, Agatha jumped to her feet right when she realized Rio had been staring for too long at Billy. Death calls Billy an abomination.
He is disrupting the sacred balance.
Anytime someone in the MCU calls some matter of fate sacred, we have to consider the TVA's terminology of the sacred timeline. Death is another one of these cosmic forces who dislike Nexus disruptors to the plan. Death mocks Agatha for going on a walk with another woman's son.
On a road that doesn't— Stop!
Yeah, Death was about to say doesn't even exist. The fact that Agatha stopped her suggests that Agatha's still ashamed that she made up the Ballad of the Witch's Road and feels awkward to be caught in a lie thanks to Billy's Scarlet Witch powers. Meanwhile, Jen explains to Billy that green craft is about growth and decay in constant flow, so therefore it makes sense that Rio is death. Somehow it also makes more sense that Loki, as god of stories, is also coded as green and tends to the branches of a tree that represents all of time, constantly growing, constantly decaying. They also wonder how Agatha and Rio met, and Jen theorizes over corpses? Jack Schaefer brought this up to the Wrap when asked why no flashback was ever included showing Agatha and Rio's meet cute, and Schaefer suggested that while one was never written, the idea that they discussed was that they might have met in the aftermath of Agatha's trial over the corpses of the Salemites. This missing scene could have also established the origin of the Salem 7 as the daughters of the Salemites. Death says that Billy committed a violation by stealing the life of William Kaplan and that he's about to do the same for his brother Tommy. But Death can't just take Billy because then he'll reincarnate in another body. I believe this is because Billy Maximoff was the Scarlet Witch's grief manifested, aka love persevering, and that Wanda's magic means that the grief love magic will always persevere in whatever open vessel it can find. Agatha offers to deliver Billy to Death, and Death makes one of the coolest exits ever. Aubrey Plaza pulls out her dagger and actually slices a cut in the real backdrop of the set and slips through it. I love this for at least 4 reasons. 1, it's fully practical and it demonstrates the true value of shooting the Witch's Road on a real practical set. It almost feels like something Aubrey Plaza could have just improvised, although it was carefully planned. 2, Death exposing the road as a theatrical ersatz set is further hint that it is a manifested dollhouse reality of a teenager and that Death knows that. 3, it creates this Truman Show-esque trippy visual where the plane we thought was the distant background is actually the immediate foreground. And 4, it's like a 10 times cooler version of the Doctor Strange and Clea slicing a tear in reality in the Multiverse of Madness post-credit scene, where there was obviously VFX there, but Rio is doing the same thing, irreverently transitioning across realms and realities. This shot just demonstrates that things can look a lot cooler when it's practical. And Jack Schaefer confirmed this to the Wrap, saying that the reason the road in our show is practical is because Billy Maximoff is a baby witch, and he can't be creating thousands and thousands of miles of forest, so he created a backdrop, and he created forced perspective, and he created models, and all of the practicality of our sets is because of him, and because of his limitations of physicality creating this world underground underneath Westview. And so that moment with Rio and the knife cutting the backdrop, that is Rio acknowledging that she knows what's going on, that she knows Billy has created this Witch's Road hex. It also just is such a badass moment. And Schaefer goes on to say it was also a nod to WandaVision. It was meant to sort of have the WandaVision feels, like the jump cut moment, like the Vision's head being crushed in, like all of our weird sort of step out moments, the Beekeeper, because he had such a short period of time where we were ready to hint at the twist that Billy had to make the road. And so it was in that same episode that we were like, we'll do this sick moment. So Agatha rejoins Billy and Jen as they stumble back upon their empty shoes that they left when they embarked upon this road, making it a full circle. And I like the detail that part of the road that they were just on with the green tint ends abruptly now and becomes blue as it was when they started. Agatha snaps, "That's it," and notice she aims it at Billy because she knows at this point that the road is his creation. Now Jen's eyes drift from Sharon's shoes to Lilia's and Alice's. Billy looks down too.
What are you gonna do? Have them bronzed?
Actually, when we see Billy's bedroom later, he does indeed have empty pairs of shoes that are bronzed. Billy puts his shoes back on to enter the next trial, which is very Wizard of Oz. The way Dorothy putting on the ruby slippers really started her journey, and it took clicking the heels of those shoes together at the end to take her home. Agatha explicitly references this when they get inside the morgue.
There's no place like home.
The final trial is an Earth trial set in a morgue made out of Agatha's basement. This makes me think that back in episode 1, when Agatha as Agnes went to a morgue to find the Jane Jane Doe corpse and found Rio as she clawed her way out of the spell, that morgue location in real life was probably just Agatha's basement. The lights overhead are purple grow lights emitting artificial UV radiation. Last week I speculated that this final trial might be a new moon, the darkest of the lunar calendar with no natural light reflected from the moon. It seems to be the case at least down here. I know it's a crescent moon when they go outside. This room has 5 sides, like the pentagon that formed the door to the road in the basement. Joe Locke has actually said in interviews that all of the trial sets we've seen on the series, if you look at blueprints for them, a base structure of 5 sides. The 3 of them are all wearing medical gowns and stripped down. Like, notice how the piercings of Billy and Jen are gone. Every trial has a countdown clock. This one has the overhead lights. They form an analog clock, which reminds us of Billy in episode 3 being unable to read an analog clock because he's a kid and I guess they don't teach that in schools anymore. But when these lights go out completely, there would be no light to grow anything. They recall how effective Jen has been despite her being bound, and Jen realizes that she must not have had that doctor take her powers, but that she actually gave them up, and Agatha's sus reaction gives it all away. Agatha was the one who bound Jennifer.
Didn't know it was you! It was the 1920s. I did the odd spell for banknotes. The patriarchy really shelled out to shush a lady.
So Jennifer Kale was not bound by the Greater Obstetrician Society of Boston in the 1920s. She was a midwife who presumably offered better care for pregnant women, and to shut her up and silence her actually more effective methods, these doctors turned to Agatha Harkness and paid her to place a binding spell on Jen. I have to say that it's a bit unfortunate that Jen's backstory had to be pieced together through 2 pieces of rushed dialogue, one by the campfire in episode 4 and now Agatha's line here, when every other major player in this Coven benefited from show don't tell and got a full spotlight episode. It's especially odd since Jen made it all the way to the end and Lilia told her that she was the path ahead, and really, other than Jen telling them that the overhead lights were grow lights, I suppose something she would know from her work growing herbs, Jen doesn't contribute much to the final trial. And we still don't really know if the doctor drowning Jen in that kitchen sink was part of what actually happened to her or just a nightmare vision representing what she thought happened. I just feel like Jen was a victim of the episode structure, perhaps the budget, but I'm just wondering why the beach house kitchen couldn't have been turned into like a 1920s hospital delivery room where Jen could have talked more openly about her past the way Alice did in episode 4. My only thought is that maybe the writer's plan was for Jennifer's conflict with the OBs to approach the subject of reproductive health in a way that maybe Disney thought was too hot button for the current political climate, but I don't really have any evidence of that. Thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. The holidays are a time for family to come together, and depending on your family dynamic, that could dredge up some stuff that you might need help processing. Therapy can help with that, and if you need help getting started with therapy, BetterHelp is here to help. BetterHelp is on a mission to make starting therapy easier. It's a platform where therapists and their clients can communicate effectively so you can get the most out of therapy. They carefully make sure their therapists on the platform are well qualified, and their customer support team is there to help you if you have any questions. Just fill out a questionnaire and you will match with a therapist in as little as a couple days. If the first therapist doesn't feel like the right fit, you can easily switch to another one until you find someone you really connect with. BetterHelp also provides a journal for personal reflection, plus group sessions on a variety of topics are available every day. Users love BetterHelp. They have over 7,000 reviews and a 4.5 rating on Trustpilot. If you are struggling and you think you'd benefit from a therapy session, click the link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/newrockstars and get 10% off your first month of therapy. Anyway, Jen rips out some of Agatha's hair and wraps it around their wrist to cast an unbinding ritual.
You hold nothing.
Say it like you mean it though, Jen.
That Agatha would use this moment to flirt with Jen. Also, you hold nothing. It's very much like the end of Labyrinth. You have no power over me. As the power returns to Jen, a blast of air blows up the drawstring of Saashir's gown, and we see Catherine Hahn's hair float upward, which is an interesting effect since they seem to be in a sealed room without any vents or floor jets. I just think it looks kind of cool. A pink glow emits from Jen's hands, the same color the potion glowed in episode 3 when she got the mixture right. Jen disappears.
The road gave her what she was missing, and now she's gone.
Now, you may ask, why then, in episode 4, once Alice Wu Gulliver cured herself of her generational curse, wasn't Alice Wu released from the road in the same way? Well, my interpretation is that Alice Wu wasn't just on the road to heal herself, she also needed to fulfill her calling as a protector witch, the Knight of Wands, and that mission brought her all the way to her death in episode 5, because that role also was critical for Lilia connecting the dots in episode 7. Now that it's just the 2 of them, Billy doesn't trust Agatha to juice her up.
Liar!
I won't.
Liar.
Yeah, Billy shouts liar in her face, turning the tables after she did the same thing to him in episode 1 and episode 6.
Or totally lying. Or
You're totally lying.
Agatha offers to help Billy find a body for his brother Tommy by guiding him through some meditation to think about his final moments in Westview. We hear Vision and Wanda from their goodbye scene to the boys in the WandaVision finale.
Your mother and I, very proud of you both. Your mother and I, very proud of you both.
Boys, thanks for choosing me to be your mom. Boys, thanks for choosing me to be your mom.
And thanks for choosing me to be your mom was a line that I very much overanalyzed while breaking down the WandaVision finale. Now that I'm a parent, I understand it's a sentiment that all parents feel when we're blessed with a child who's young enough to still want us and need us. But there's also some cosmic truth to it for Billy and Tommy, disembodied souls who now kind of choose a new body with new parents. Billy hears a soft breathing of his brother, and then hears Vision's final line to Wanda as the hex collapsed.
We have said goodbye before, so it stands to reason.
We'll say hello again.
We have said goodbye before, so it stands to reason.
We'll say hello again.
But think about it, since Billy was upstairs for that conversation, Billy must be using his telepathy to listen to the minds of people that he loves. And I am still holding that as a promise that Wanda and Vision will reunite someday. Agatha coaches Billy along, and soon his and Tommy's breathing becomes synced.
Breathing together.
Yeah, there's a fun little edit there. We cut from spinning around the back of Billy's head on the left side to a profile shot spinning on his right side, as if we're now seeing the face of Tommy sharing the space with him. Agatha seems to understand that since Billy's soul was a form of Wanda's magic, as was Tommy's, that magic can be manipulated so that Billy can invoke the magic of his brother and redirect it somewhere in the world. Agatha grabs his head and directs him to locate where Tommy must go. At first, Billy says it's black, and we flash to a nearly black frame, but with red shapes moving through it. Notice how these shapes interlock almost at hexagonal angles. These red shapes must be the red tinted CMBR that made up the hex wall and the roots of everything Wanda conjured within that hex, including Tommy. Really, we are seeing from the perspective of Tommy's non-existence, as he's just kind of like Agatha's magical code. Billy says he can't find a place, but Agatha says 120 bodies empty out every minute. I don't know where Agatha got 120 as a statistic, but reportedly 106 people die on Earth every 60 seconds. Maybe the death rate is just significantly higher in the MCU. So the red CMBR is beneath the surface of lake water, as if Billy is surfacing through the watery subconscious of his brother, and we see hazy shots of a young man being pushed into the water. This boy wears a dark hat, a gray tank, shorts, and shoes, meaning he did not show up to this lakeside ready to go swimming. He was dragged out here and forced in, probably a non-swimmer. We learn that this kid was pranked and drowned in the water. They hold his head down. It looks like a summer camp scenario gone awry, perhaps a reference to Jason Voorhees at Camp Crystal Lake in the Friday the 13th films. Billy shouts,
The people, the family, there's no one to love him. He's got no one.
Now, since the Agatha series was somewhat consistent with Billy Kaplan's family background, we should note that in the Young Avengers comics, Tommy Shepard was less fortunate. After the Wanda Mephisto backstory of the character, Tommy Shepard was reborn to Frank and Mary Shepard, who divorced when he was young, leading Tommy to have a pretty rough childhood, in and out of juvie. Then he vaporized his high school using his speed powers, implying it was an accident, leading to Tommy being imprisoned by the government and experimented upon to turn him into a living weapon. So whenever the MCU picks up with the search for Tommy, perhaps a Vision Quest, it's going to be a very dark situation for him. But the fact that Tommy's origin moment appears to be a kid being bullied, which would have been bullied to death if not for Billy's intervention here, it makes me feel like when we see Tommy next could be a story about youth bullying, and my hope is that this will be the predominant theme of Marvel's mutant saga on the other side of Secret Wars. Grounded stories of how we treat each other, why we bully, why we oppress, why we retreat to our tribal corners, and that is the story of mutants in the Marvel world. And the way Billy Maximoff found William Kaplan, a vessel of a boy already primed to like magic, I wonder if Tommy could have found a kid already primed, maybe via a mutant gene, to be a speedster. Billy shouts,
Am I killing this boy so my brother can live?
Of course, Billy didn't compel the summer camp bullies to push Tommy into the lake and hold him down, but this speaks to Billy's own guilt for taking over William's body. Some part of him still thinks that by taking over William's body, he killed William, when in truth, he really just took over a vessel that was already empty. Tommy raises his head from the water and breathes with new life, and Billy, achieving what he needed, exits the road, and Agatha says, really just for herself,
No, Billy. Sometimes boys die.
Of course, she's talking about her own experience with Nicholas. The overhead lights tick down to 3, and we were reminded of the 3 of swords again, as well as the triple goddess of Agatha's brooch. Beneath the locket of Nicky's hair is a single dandelion seed, which Agatha plants in the crack of the floor with her teardrop as water and says, out of death, life. Now, if you think about it, Agatha is producing life with no spell, no incantation, from scratch. Her final trial is to remember what it felt like to create life without magic, something she hasn't done since Nicholas, perhaps because she's worried that things born without magic are things you can lose. But death comes for us all, and death is what gives life meaning. That's as true for us when we die as it is for those of us who have lost someone and have to figure out how to keep going. A dandelion grows and blooms, and Agatha escapes from the morgue to find herself in her backyard. Death cackles on the rooftop. Yes, very Wicked Witch of the West, when the Wicked Witch appears on the roof of the cottage beside the yellow brick road before hurling a fireball at Scarecrow. Lightning flashes, revealing the bottom half of Death's skull face. Agatha claims she released Billy, but since he's not here, Death is ready to claim Agatha.
I'm thinking death by 1,000 cuts.
1,000 Cuts is the same death Kilgrave compels Jerry's wife, Wendy, to inflict upon her in season 1 of Jessica Jones. John Collins, Abelash Tandon, and Harold Proctor look up at the green sky and assume another hex has consumed Westview, this one green instead of red. Agatha looks up at the moon to see it's a waxing crescent, the same phase it was during Alice's trial in episode 4.
Waxing moon.
The fire phase.
And so Agatha applies what she learned from the trial, how to fight fiery demonic forces, and pours salt around her to form a protective ring, as they did in the recording studio. Agatha chants in Latin,
Expelle hoc malum,
which Death translates as expel this evil. Death blows a kiss, gusting away the salt ring, and calls Agatha a coward. And Agatha remembers Lily's advice to hit the deck after hearing coward, and she ducks just in time to avoid the kitchen sink. Death is throwing everything at Agatha, including the kitchen sink. Death uses roots to slash Agatha's heel, giving us some super cringy Pet Cemetery violence I was not ready for. Agatha gets some water from the hose and chants, Our Twitter Latin expert, Mad Latinist, cited Dr. Kat Dixon, the language expert who works on the show, to translate this as wound be healed from the water. I assume she's using the same moonlight and water healing charm that Jennifer Kale used on Billy in episode 4. The lights of the house pop and Death is knocked aside, and we see flapping blue and red clothes on the laundry line to foretell the next reveal. Wiccan in his comic accurate form. Joe Locke told Deadline that Daniel Ceylon designed the Wiccan costume to be a patchwork of interesting details, like there are runes on the jumper, a wand crown, and a vision mind stone on each side of the leather 3D printed top. He also pointed out that on the jeans he's been wearing all season long are a square leather patch on the knee. That is the same leather used in this final costume. And that in episode 4, when he was stabbed, the jumper around would get redder and redder and turn into the cape that he's now wearing. So this costume here is really just a patchwork of what he's been wearing all along this road. Daniel Ceylon actually got into the technical engineering of this costume, saying, I wanted to represent his origins in his cape, so we dimensionally printed the texture of the Scarlet Witch's costume from Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness on the outside and printed Vision's iconically graphic cape on the underside so that Billy's parents would always be with him. I love that sentiment. Again, give him all the Emmys. Also, really fun detail, there is an X in a circle visible on Billy's arm, which has to be an X-Men nod, which would fit with my theory that the next time we see Billy and Tommy could be as incoming students to Charles Xavier's Mutant Academy in the Mutant Saga. So Wiccan floats down, his hands glowing blue as the Transformer shower sparks around him. It's just a very cool entrance. He shows his faith in Agatha by blasting her. His pose is similar to his mother Wanda's when she blasted Vision's Mind Stone in Infinity War. Agatha's purple takes over the stream and she holds it a little too long before pinching it off so that Billy starts to look a little drained, and Agatha's back in her dress from the WandaVision finale. Agatha and Death and Billy engage in a 2-on-1 witch duel, kind of like Harry getting blown back in Order of the Phoenix while Voldemort and Dumbledore are going at it. That's kind of what happens to Billy here. Agatha and Billy agree that they can't defeat Death, and Agatha says it should be her, but when Billy volunteers, Agatha tells Death, yeah, just take him. Also, she says, fix my yard.
Why don't you plant a few azaleas on your way out?
Just a reminder that Sharon Davis was gonna teach Agatha an easy trick for great azaleas before Agatha cut her off and made her join her in her coven in episode 2. But now Billy demonstrates that he actually cares about Agatha as he manages to invade her mind.
Is this how Nicky died?
Now, Billy's wrong. It's not exactly how Nicky died, but for Agatha, the idea of letting Death take another innocent boy away from her is just too much to repeat. So she gives Death what she has wanted in multiple ways and plants a big ol' kiss on her and gives herself the kiss of death. The interviewer at the Wrap, Anita Ortiz, who has been doing an amazing job interviewing Jack Schaefer all season long, pointed out that both of their eyes are closed in this moment. So in a way, Agnes doesn't really get a close-up view of Death's face. The life finally drains from Agatha's body and she rapidly ages and rapidly decomposes into a mossy mound covered in flowers flowers and mushrooms, most of them Agatha purple. And I love this detail. If you look closely at the skull, Agatha's final breath puffs out as the skull collapses. And we know that vapor will turn into a ghost very soon. Billy and Death stand in mourning. Billy finds the brooch and Death turns to him. And for the shot, it was an actual practical prosthetic worn by Aubrey Plaza, and it looks sick. And I think they did this because now it's like sort of natural sunlight and they just needed the detail on the bone surfaces to hold up on the warmer studio lights. Billy walks bruised and battered through Westview as the neighbors stare, and he raises his hood, looking just like Wanda did as she walked through Westview, avoiding the stares of others after dropping the hex. Billy returns to Eastview to Rebecca and Jeff, and we learn that he's only been gone for 24 hours. So the full Witch's Road was only a day in surface world time. While there was probably some time dilation there, considering most of the episodes along the road actually picked up right where the last ones left off, it really didn't seem to be that much longer than a day that they were gone. Billy showers, and we spend a long time in this shot with the camera low to the ground approaching his bedroom, reminding me of the point of view shot of Death in the opening shot of Alice. Now, this is the ghostly point of view of Agatha. Billy wipes away the condensation, triggering me from the roadie scroll shot in Secret Invasion. Now in Billy's room, we're able to see angles with different posters we weren't able to see in episode 6. On the hallway from the bathroom, there are posters of fungi, like the mushrooms that dot the Witch's Road. There's a poster for Haxan, a witch film from the 1920s, of course, Rocky Horror Picture Show, and a poster for the Buffy the Vampire musical episode, Once More with Feeling. We also see Billie Eilish's When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go album cover, which is an album that contains You Should See Me in a Crown, which played when Wiccan's look was revealed. Also on the door, we see a Poltergeist 2 poster. We also see a poster for Jennifer's Body, and Trovelo, and Evanescence. Billy looks around at his room at the Lorna Wu poster, the figurines of the Wizard of Oz characters, including the green-skinned Wicked Witch, which is a shot that appears in the credits of every episode. What follows is a grand reveal sequence, edited in the style of The Sixth Sense, for the ending of HBO's Sharp Objects, but most of all, The Usual Suspects, when the whole film is put into a new perspective as a fantasy inspired by random details that were in plain sight throughout the movie on the wall of the room. Our breakdown of episode 6 went into most of the visible details in Billy's room and began to theorize that this could be the case. Yay. But I must admit I'm surprised that the show leaned so hard into it. I'm not used to, getting predictions right. Billy realizes that the full design and creation was his own doing, hearing the legend and willing it into existence using the Scarlet Witch reality manipulation powers inspired by his own design influences, the trees and leaves, decor from Billy's room, and William's bar mitzvah table centerpieces. The shifting colors of the road may be meant to be a rainbow, an expression of Billy's queer identity. Jen's beach house based on a poster in Billy's room, Alice's house based on posters of Lorna Wu and Fleetwood Mac, Agatha's sleepover filled with triangular string lights that Billy had in his room, along with various board games like Ouija, Lilia's castle based on the tarot cards that Billy had in his room, and the Wizard of Oz figurines and posters that he had in his room. And of course, the Hex and Besson was Billy's suggestion, and every first clue that initiated the trial was found by him. He was always the one pushing the others along. Earlier, Agatha appeared perfectly behind Billy on the Witch's Road when he was talking shit about her to Jen. Now, her ghost does the same. A couple final details from episode 8. During the credits, the photograph of the kid in the witch mask has been updated to this image of a young Joe Locke with that witch mask raised on his head. And photoshopped beside him is Rebecca Kaplan actress Maria Dizia, who's also in Halloween costume. And we also end with the Marvel Television Presents and the final card on a different background, Billy's bedroom, including his creepy ass Nosferatu poster lower on his door. Because of course there never was an actual Witch's Road before Billy created it using this kind of decor. All right, moving on to episode 9, Maiden Mother Crone. Obviously named after the triple goddess of Agatha's brooch, but it also represents the 3 stages of Agatha's life. The Maiden when she was young and put on trial by the Salemites and presumably first met death, though the episode omitted that flashback. The Mother when she was with Nicholas, and the Crone in all the years afterwards, and began to transition to the ghostly form she now takes. We open in the year 1750 as a pregnant Agatha runs into the woods, fleeing something. We know she is a fugitive who has pissed off most witches in New England, but here she's chased by these female choir vocals, which to me sound like the chanting voices of the Salemites whom she tried to kill. We are 57 years after Agatha's 1693 trial. Agatha stops at a fog-draped lakeside. I wonder if Marvel might have used the same lake that they used for Tony Stark's home in Avengers Endgame in the Atlanta area. The fact that there is so much fog reminds us of the green fog that Rio/Death took Alice into. It seems like Death is really setting the table to take baby Nicky. Agatha slices a lemon to clench her teeth on something to take her mind off the labor pain. I love that Catherine Hahn actually did this in the shot. She sliced a lemon against a tree and stuffed it in her mouth. Now, where would Agatha have gotten a fruit like a lemon in 1750 New England? Well, she's a witch. She can probably just conjure fruit out of time and space. And she just didn't conjure food for Nicky, keep the poor kid skinny, good for thieving. Agatha looks over to see Rio already standing there. It's a creepy edit, but it's also kind of sweet that Rio is standing by holding this flower. This is the same flower that I believe she was holding on the rooftop during the battle in episode 8. We are pretty sure this is a ghost orchid. Orchids are often representative of death and chosen as funeral flowers as they symbolize love love persevering for the deceased. This one is more purplish than white, but orchids often range from white to purple colors. Aubrey Plaza appears to have been de-aged, at least with makeup for this flashback. Her cloak and dress are fully green. Jack Schaefer told The Wrap that it was really important for them to dress Death in a way to reflect the balance of life and death, not to show everything withering around her, but to also be the source of the decay from which everything green on this planet sprouts, as a way to show that death isn't something meant to be feared that much, but just something meant to be accepted. Agatha recognizes Rio, telling her that if she takes Nicky, she'll hate her forever.
Please let him live. Please, my love. Please.
Jack Schaefer told The Wrap that Agatha and Rio were lovers before this and that the writers considered showing the life that the two of them had, like in a cottage, but they wanted to focus on the Nicky story. Death has pity on her love, offering time, but not specifying how much time. In a way, this uncertainty is not a gift. It's the opposite of the clear certainty that Lilia gains of her end in episode 7. If death comes for us all, arguably it's a gift to know when that's coming. For Agatha to gain a small number of years could be seen as a gift, but for an ageless witch who lives hundreds of years after that, is a fraction of that life weighing so heavily on the rest of it worth it? I recognize this is a very deep question to consider, and I honestly can't spend that much energy thinking about it. Agatha gives birth to baby Nicky, a baby that I can now speak from experience is not a newborn, at least 3 months I would say, but very cute nonetheless. Agatha says she spoke no spell, spoke no incantation.
You are made from scratch.
There are many ways to interpret what exactly Agatha meant by from scratch, but it's very clear that no magic was used in Nicky's conception. By scratch suggests the old-fashioned way, and scratch is obviously suggested to be the origin of his name, Nicholas Scratch. I would think there must have been a father, unless from scratch means something like a recipe, and Agatha might be using, like a tear in the dandelion seed in the morgue trial, but even that felt a bit like some kind of magic. Jack Schaefer told Deadline that there is a lot of story left and that they had lots of conversations about Nicky's father, but that she felt ultimately for this story it didn't matter. In our Ending Explained video, I speculated everyone from Old Scratch Mephisto, assuming Agatha didn't know it was Mephisto, to, I wish I was joking, second president of the United States, John Adams. Agatha's Brujapedia profile mentions succubus powers, referring to a feminized demon who has sex with men while they're sleeping. Many online want the father to just be Death herself, pointing to some similarities, I guess, between Nicky and Aubrey Plaza's physicality. Really, I just think Jack Schaefer clearly didn't want there to be a specified father. And the camera work just breaks our hearts by focusing on Nicky's baby feet and his pudgy little fingers as they clutch Agatha's hair. Oh God, I'm not gonna let go of my kid this week. Since Jen pulled strands of Agatha's hair out as a process of unbinding, I feel like this could be baby Nicky instinctively binding to his mama. The camera glides away from Agatha and Nicky across the lake through the fog, which feels like the inverse of the sweeping shots of the WandaVision post-credit scene, showing the camera gliding in toward the lake cabin to the witch who didn't have her son or sons. Nicky cries as Agatha finds a coven of women singing Greensleeves, which is an old English folk song whose melody is used, of course, for the Christmas hymn, What Child Is This? It's believed by some that the original lyrics of Lady Greensleeves talk about a promiscuous young woman, as at the time, green sometimes had sexual connotations, as in a green gown being a reference to grass stains on a woman's dress from, But I think this is also just a real reflection of Rio's green sleeves, like her literal green clothes, and how, despite the time Agatha was given, the green is always following her. Now, the lyrics of Greensleeves that the women actually sing here are, "Alas, my love, you do me wrong, to cast me off discourteously, and I have looked you well and long, delighting in your..." and they're cut off. In this context, it's kind of a breakup song, right? Kind of reflecting the breakup between Agatha and Rio. Agatha seems to be wearing new clothes now than what she was wearing when she gave birth to Nicky, making me think that some time has passed and she might have jumped another witch between then and now. Agatha uses Nicky to hide her brooch from view. She likely knows that her reputation of what she did to Evanora and the other Salemites has gotten around. The witch accepts Agatha and Nicky with the Latin phrase, according to Mad Latinist on Twitter, this means we accept to receive or welcome you to our circle. The Latin spell is what deactivates the security spell on the stones that allows Agatha to walk through. These witches sweep the ground as golden dust floats and golden dust is sprinkled nearby to grow some mushrooms. Agatha is offered tea, but then attacks. The light reflecting on the trees goes from gold to purple, and if you listen closely, we hear one of the witches scream, "Stop, no!" Then another witch shouts, "Who let you in?" And the first witch says, "Sisters, gather!" And then they all scream. So what happened was, Agatha probably started attacking the least experienced witch of the bunch, which triggered the other witches to blast her defensively, which Agatha then used to drain them all. We transition 6 years later to 1756. A goat passes us as a 6-year-old Nicky Scratch sits by a well. This actor is Abel Lysenko, and he does a great job this episode. Now, his Historically, 1756 in North America was the start of the 7 Years' War, also known as the French and Indian War, between the American-British colonists and the Canadian French, who allied with some indigenous tribes. But none of that seems to be affecting this community. A friendly vendor notices how frail Nicky is, which again suggests that rather than just feeding Nicky a normal diet, Agatha sustains him only on magic drained from other witches, and might have kept him skinny as part of this scheme to draw sympathy, which feels like child endangerment. But it's also possible that Nicky was born with some kind of like metabolic illness that made it impossible to sustain himself on normal food. Like, this kid is on borrowed time as it is. Nicky steals a bell, and this is the same bell that Agatha chimes to begin the Ballad of the Witches' Road. Nicky lures witches into Agatha's house where she drains them, and we hear Agatha saying, "One can always rely on the kindness of witches," which feels like a nod to Blanche Dubois' famous line in Tennessee Williams' A Streetcar Named Desire, "I have always depended on the kindness of strangers." Blanche says that line at the end of the show, cementing her detachment from reality as a doctor leads her away. Nicky pets another goat outside. Now in Robert Eggers' The Witch, the goat Black Phillip was a representation of Satan, but goats have commonly represented some kind of demonic influence. I believe they chose a white and brown goat to avoid a comparison to Black Phillip, but it's still a bit demonic either way, and this goat has a white pattern that, I don't know, kind of looks like a rune to me. Nicky asks the right question. Can we live with witches instead of killing them? And Agatha says no. But it's not just selfishness. Agatha fears that if they were to stop killing witches and keeping death busy with those bodies, that death would come for Nicky. Meanwhile, Nicky sings this.
Walk, walk, walk the road. I walk the windy road.
So what will become the deceptive Ballad of the Witches' Road really just begins as a sweet, innocent walking song. And walking songs come up all the time in Tolkien, from the walking song that Gandalf hums as he approaches Hobbiton, and the one Bilbo sings as he ventures out. The road goes ever on and on, down from the door where it began. This is why Agatha thought the lyrics were of Coven 2 instead of Coven True, because her Coven was always just with Nicky. Nicky begs for normal food.
Use your purple.
Using purple as like a tangible noun is always so funny to me, reminding me of when Agatha used it this way with Rio in episode 1.
Just let me get my purple back.
What follows is a beautiful sequence when Agatha and Nicky just run through nature and enjoy witchcraft while co-composing the original words of the song. There's a road that's wild and wicked, winding through the wood, where all that's wrong is right and all that's bad is good. Down, down, down the road, down the windy road. For Nicky, this song wasn't a trick, it was a celebration of traveling with someone you love and a message of hope that this windy, not witchy, road could lead to something good. Nicky blows a dandelion, of course the same flower that Agatha will regrow in the Earth Trial, and pay attention to where these seeds go, because I think one of these seeds will never land until a precise moment. Really, all this plays out like just their last good day, making this lyric feel like foreshadowing for the dreaded day to come. Tame your fears, the door appears, the time has come to go. Now this ballad is used as a pub song that Nicky performs for money. This is why Nicky's bedroom in episode 1 had a plaque awarding him with best vocals. Agatha cases the pub looking for any group of women larger than 3 gathering, and assumes, based on her 3-mile radius stat that she told Billy about in episode 2,
within any 3-mile radius, there will be a collection of witchy enough people to form a coven.
that they are probably witches. Nicky now looks paler and wears a hat that makes him look sick. Nicky lets off a cough that at first seems like it could be part of the script to induce sympathy, but it's probably just a real cough, as Nicky has already made the decision to not allow Agatha to drain this witch.
I thank you, but no. My mother needs me home.
He coughs again down by the creek, and we know it's not performative. Death is coming. Also, that red-haired witch is playing with her own little amulet, if you look closely, showing how all witches everywhere have this representative flair. Agatha sings to Nicky,
I stray not from the path. Hold your hand in mine.
Now what's interesting is the later lyric will be, I hold death's hand in mine. That's why Agatha changes it, because Nicky took death's hand. They say goodnight with my blood, my tears, my bone, maiden mother Crone. These are the lyrics of later versions, but it's a reminder from Agatha that Nicky is her blood, her flesh, and also her grief. Nicky awakens to see Rio with a green flame waiting for him. She waves and beckons, and it's interesting again that death does not take her scary skeletal form to Nicky. She wants to present a friendly face so that death won't be something to be feared, but just a natural part of life that we can accept. Rio points back to Agatha, and Nicky gives Agatha 2 tiny kisses, perhaps one for him and one for Rio. I just love the idea that Rio might have been a member of this family that Nicky might have been able to see all this time, unafraid of her, just seeing her as a co-parent. He is the little Peveril brother who is under the invisibility cloak but able to see death all this time. And this double kiss ritual might have been something that the 3 of them did multiple nights in and Agatha never knew it. Like Death might have been using Nicky to kiss her love because Death couldn't kiss her herself. Death leaves Nicky across a footbridge, a bridge that did not exist before in the earlier shots, meaning that this is a cosmic passage to the afterlife meant only for these travelers over a river of Styx that Agatha cannot cross. And now it becomes clear, Rio Battle, River of Life. Now, we should also note that Nicky died creekside, down by the water, which might be why in Agatha's Mayor of Easttown hallucination in Wanda's spell, that's how dead Wanda manifested herself to her. By the way, Jack Schaefer said that Marvel execs instructed her to reference Wanda Maximoff using the words gone, not dead, just gone. Make of that what you will. Agatha wakes up to find Nicky dead beside her, and she shouts, "I want more time." This is also what she shouted in the Earth trial in the morgue when she was trying to grow Nicky's dandelion. So Agatha buries Nicky and sings a funeral version of the ballad. "I have always known this road is cruel and wild. I bury my own heart here with you, my child. If one be gone, we carry on, but every mile I go, with every bend beyond the end, your mother loves you so." She places a lock of Nicky's hair in the brooch locket, and since in the morgue there is a dandelion seed under that hair, that must mean that when Agatha is distracted by this other witch who walks up, one of those blown dandelion seeds from Nicky from the day before has wafted into that brooch to stay with his mother forever. This blonde witch asks Agatha for a way to the road, showing that Nicky's ballad has spread far and wide among the witches as a possible path to glory. With her hat, this witch actually must look like Sharon Davis when she was gardening, so just something about this look makes Agatha want to exploit. They assemble a coven of witches singing the ballad, and when no door opens, Agatha does the routine that she will later do with Lilia, Jen, Alice, and Sharon, call them pathetic and invoke their wrath, but it works here. She drains them, and the emaciated corpses that fall are actually the same ones that we saw in the Agnes of Westview opening credits in episode 1. Next, we see Agatha in Victorian era garb, meaning late 19th century or early 20th century. Actually, this is probably around the era in which Agatha survived the Titanic voyage. And now that we know that Death was not with her for that, I shudder to think what Agatha did during that tragedy. Did she drain witches on the boat, causing a distraction that caused the crew to not see the iceberg? Or was she huddled with some other women and children on a lifeboat, drained all of them to survive, and just kind of chalked up the gray corpses to the cold? And when these Victorian witches fall, I love how their falls sync with the words.
Maiden Mother Crone.
The next era looks like the 1930s. Now I was thinking maybe the 1920s flapper era, but no, their hemlines are different and they wear jackets and ties for some of them when movie stars were changing fashion standards so that women could get away wearing pants and ties. Specifically, I think this is the era when Agatha rode and survived the Hindenburg, making it 1937. Next is the era I wish we spent more time in, the good old 1990s, when Agatha is made up to look like Fairuza Balk in The Craft. I just rewatched The Craft. It's awesome, and I'm telling you, you can trace a straight line from The Craft to Charmed to Agatha all along. This montage takes us to the present day Coven when Agatha is shocked to see a door actually formed on the basement floor thanks to Billy's magic. And now caught in his lie, she has to play along with it. Catherine Hahn here breaks the fourth wall to look directly at us like Wanda Maximoff did in that creepy moment in Multiverse of Madness. And that is what breaks us out of this flashback to take us back to Agatha's present chat with Billy when she is a ghost. Boom! Ah! Agatha Harkness actually takes the form of a ghost in the 2016 James Robinson Scarlet Witch run. The first storyline to introduce the Witch's Road concept, as Ghost Agatha, is a companion guide to Wanda Maximoff, so it makes sense that she takes this role to Wanda's son. Ghost Agatha says that she took a calculated risk, suggesting that she planned to get past death this way, knowing that Rio doesn't like ghosts.
I hate ghosts.
But understands she still has a role to play. Agatha takes any opportunity to shade Wanda, and here she tells Billy that unlike Wanda, he actually did something interesting with his power. I read this as like a meta line that Agatha is more of a drama nerd who prefers practical sets and musical theater to sitcom homages. Billy feels guilt for creating the road if it meant the deaths of Alice, Lilia, and
Mrs. Davis.
Who?
She didn't even belong on the road, and now she's dead because of me.
Yes, the gardening lady.
Ah, true to the end, disrespectful to Mrs. Davis. Agatha suggests that since she was gonna kill Jen and Jen survived, Billy technically saved a life. Jen's hand burst out of the grass outside Westview, reminding me of the shot in Brian De Palma's Carrie. Jen, it seems, may never know that the road wasn't real until Billy created it. But she flies away free, no longer bound, and she passes a crescent moon that's now red. Now, blood moons only get their red color because the shadow of the earth is in that particular position. You would never see a red waxing crescent moon look like this. So I choose to believe this is a sign important that the Scarlet Witch lives. Or maybe this crescent moon is supposed to be pink and it's meant to reflect the pink color of Jen's restored magic. I want it to be scarlet. So Billy drives back to Agatha's house where the front door is boarded up. So this would be after Agatha's door was knocked down in episodes 1 and 2, but we should note that that took place like a day ago. So I think the residents of Westview, they looked up at that green sky and they thought, uh-oh, maybe people should stop going in this house. Billy goes down to the basement and passes Mr. Scratchy's cage. I can't tell if the rabbit is in there, but I hope someone's taking care of that rabbit. Maybe it was Harold Proctor. After boarding up the store, he found that rabbit and he's like, Sarah, we got to take care of this thing now. I just think this guy kind of looks like a rabbit. It makes sense to me. Now, finding the doors to the road still illuminated, maybe because it was Billy's magic that created it, Billy traces chalk on the floor to form a circle and a pentagram. And based on his pivot with the chalk from the circle to the first straight line of the star, it seems like he never takes his chalk off the floor and draws a pretty good pentagram in one stroke, which isn't just impressive, it might be the proper way to cast the hex. Billy summons a spellbook and it zips right through Agatha's ghost chest, and she seems to feel it. And on that same shelf is the bell that Nicky stole in 1756. Billy reads in Latin,
Vade ad lucem, relinque terram, naliese phantasma.
Mad Latinist on Twitter says this translates to, go toward the light, leave the earth, do not be a ghost. This account also points out that the subtitles that you read on Disney Plus, Valia lucem relinque terram naliese phantasmo, are apparently just gibberish if you translate them from Latin. Agatha says he can't banish her just with a spell and a personal item, and it wasn't him who freed her from Wanda's spell doing the same, but then she backpedals and says he did loosen the jar. I think she's really saying that her freedom was Billy's spell, but also needed Wanda's death, plus Agatha clawing her own way out with death's encouragement. But Agatha refuses to depart to an afterlife because
I can't face him!
this confession allows her to finally make contact with the brooch. Another nod to 1990s Ghost, when extreme focus and emotional honesty is the only thing that allows ghosts to make physical contact with the material world. But it's not just Nicholas that Agatha cannot face. She cannot face him knowing that she used the ballad they wrote together to do exactly what he asked her not to do, and that she killed witches over and over and over again. Agatha places the brooch on her ghostly form now, and the Maiden Mother Crone are replaced by just a purple glow. I interpret this as Agatha has now gone through the 3 phases of witchhood from the triple goddess, Maiden as a young girl learning power above her station, mother to Nicky, and Crone as a covenless witch. And now, as a ghost, she has reached spectral status of enlightenment. I have compared her to Gandalf the White, a new, illuminated, true form, final form of the character. Billy says that he's sure Nicholas would forgive her of whatever she did, and Agatha turns and says, it's when you say things like that you remind me of him. And now we finally understand why Agatha emotionally transferred from Nicky to Billy. It's not because they're just simple witch-obsessed familiars of a certain age, it's because they give complicated villains like her the benefit of the doubt, even when they don't deserve it. Billy recognizes that a ghost form is really most appropriate for the spirit witch of the Coven, Spirit as my guide, and they decide to form a new Coven 2. Billy turns the doors into a memorial headstone for Sharon and Alice and Lilia, and they open the basement door to the light.
Let's go find Tommy.
End of series. In episode 5, Lilia established a rule about ghosts in the MCU.
Emotion ties them to this plane. They have unfinished business.
For Agatha, that unfinished business is to balance the scales with good deeds to make up for how she misused Nicky's song to help find the neglected lost son of the Scarlet Witch. And we are reminded of the voice she heard of Nicky back in episode 5. Until that voice tells her it's okay, she's going to stay on this mortal plane. Now, entering blinding light isn't just a symbol of spiritual enlightenment that these two reach, but after a season of color-coded chapters, each color corresponding to a different member of the Coven, what we see as white is actually all of the colors in the visible spectrum of light merged together. Therefore, the Coven is again united in perfect harmony. So was the Witch's Road simply Agatha all along? Was it Billy all along? Does the fact that the song was intended to be a trick cheapen Lilia and Alice's sacrifices, especially knowing that it would be for a teen's dollhouse pocket reality? Absolutely not, in my opinion. Billy and Wanda's magic made the road real. And to quote another famous wielder of magic, in a white glow similar to this series' final shot,
of course it's happening inside your head, Harry. Why should that mean that it's not real?
Ah yes, one of many beautiful sentiments that we will explore in our Harry Potter rewatch series starting this Saturday, November 9th, in which we will revisit a series that we grew up with and was an important part of our nerdy lives, while we must address the complications when it comes to liking and talking about it now. I want to thank all of you for joining us down the road. This has been an especially meaningful time for me to revisit that feeling of WandaVision, which, looking back, I think might have been my favorite time working at this job. Just to be able to go back down that road with you all means the world to me, and I thank you for your patience as we've gotten these analyses to you. And I especially want to thank my Coven True, Jessica Clemons, Brandon Barrick, Gina Ippolito, Noah Chen, Evan Yee, John Costa, Zach Huddleston, Berg, Joshua Stephen Hurd, Riley Auskelis, Patty Chambers, Drew Coombs, Aaron Carrion, Devin Cleary, Brian Kim, Dashiell Hamilton, Ed Vilderman, Eric Gorday, Gregory Morgan, Kelly Jewell, Ryan Moulton, Jordan West, and everyone else who worked on our Agatha content this season. I could not have made it down this road without you all. Comment down below with your thoughts on Agatha all along. Follow me at EA Voss. Subscribe to all 3 channels in the New Rockstars network for breakdowns and news coverage of everything you love. Thanks for watching. Mr. Shart out.